Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. And we are here with you. We are here today with another episode of Diversity in Dentistry Talks. Today, we have Dr. Justin Lin. And me and Liz are going to interview him about his dental journey and his contributions to the field in general. So thank you so much, Dr. Lin, for coming in today to our talk.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So I'm going to give it off to Liz for our first three questions.
So hi, Dr. Lin. Tonight we're going to begin with just a general introduction before we dive into specifics. So could you please introduce yourself to our audience and then begin to discuss your background and where you grew up and so on.
Okay, so my name is Justin Lin. My background is Chinese-Jamaican, and probably should explain that a bit. Sometimes when I tell people I'm Chinese-Jamaican, they'll ask, which one of your parents is Chinese and which one is Jamaican? Well, the answer is both of them are Chinese-Jamaican. There's a big population of us that in my parents' generation, they grew up in Jamaica. Maybe a couple generations before that, they moved to Jamaica from China. My parents' generation moved to different areas, a lot of them to the Toronto area, some to Florida, different parts of the States. And most of my generation would have grown up and lived where they do. So I was born and raised in the Toronto area. I grew up around Scarborough and then Richmond Hill. Now I'm in the Durham region, Pickering. I practice in North York.
Wow, that's incredible.
Wow, that's really interesting. And especially your story about Chinese-Jamaican was very inspiring. I didn't know such a specific niche. Yeah, that was very interesting, Doctor.
Great.
So,
yeah, there's a, sorry, let me continue. There's a big population of us that, they've known each other they grew up in Jamaica, they went to school in Jamaica. And a lot of them, for whatever reason, moved to Toronto. And they will have a lot of big events throughout the year, picnics, events, dinners, all sorts of social events. A lot of my patients are Chinese-Jamaican as well. So it's good to have that connection with them.
That's great. So you grew up in Toronto, but were your parents the ones who transitioned to come here from Jamaica?
Yeah, most of them, most of the adults in my parents' generation, they grew up in Jamaica, went to school, and then made the decision to move here. So most of my family had left Jamaica. Right. I have a couple aunts and uncles and maybe one or two cousins that are still there. But most of my family is either in Toronto, some went to Calgary, and some scattered around the States, but mostly the Toronto area.
That's great. Very interesting. Thanks. And next up, we're wondering where you completed your undergraduate degree as well as your dental degree and how you found those experiences.
Right. So I went to undergrad at Western, and my journey to dentistry was kind of a unique one than most. When I first started Western, I wanted to actually go into computer science. Did that for about a year and a half. Dentistry wasn't even on my radar at the time. Wow. After about a year and a half of trying computer science, I realized I didn't get it at all. Yeah. It was not for me. I was so far behind the other students in those classes. Right. So, I made the decision to switch to more science-based, ended up taking a major in biology. Okay. So after that, kind of didn't really go into dental school at the time. I was just trying to find, a regular job with a biology degree after, to little success. I was out of school for a couple of years doing a bunch of random non-glamorous, not so glamorous jobs.
Right.
It wasn't really until, oh, I should mention, by the way, my dad's a dentist.
Okay.
His father was also a dentist and his brother was a dentist as well. So it kind of runs in the family.
Right.
I'd be the third generation of dentists in my family.
That's incredible. So is that what made you start considering the field?
Not really solely because of that. What had happened is I was kind of between jobs after Western.
Mm-hmm.
My dad needed someone to jump in and assist for a couple of weeks. So I did that. And it was then when I really started to, once you're there working in the field every day,
Right.
Observing what's going on, thinking, oh, I think I could do this.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then at the time, after, since I was already done up with Western, I said, well, if I don't start trying to get in now, I probably never will.
Right.
So I made the decision to start applying to a bunch of different schools, U of T, Western, a lot of schools in the States. Took the DAT. I didn't get in the first year.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get in the second year.
Wow.
Between that and the third time trying, I retook the DAT to try to increase my scores a little bit.
Right.
I actually met with the dean of Howard, which is where I ended up going for dental school,
Mm-hmm.
Howard University in Washington, D.C. I flew down there to do a tour of the school and met up with her. She gave me, her name was Dr. Skinner. She was kind enough to give me a couple minutes of her time. She actually told me, okay, look, you haven't gotten in for the past couple of years because, to be quite honest, my grades were not as up to par as what they should be.
Sure.
So she gave me the advice to take a couple courses in the meantime,
Mm-hmm.
reapply for the next year, and depending on how you do, you'll get consideration.
Right.
So for the summer, I took a course, I believe, in microbiology and biochemistry, I believe it was.
Mm-hmm.
Did pretty well, which actually worked out because I was able to get another academic reference letter, which was tough because being out of school so long, it was kind of difficult to go back to the old professors. A lot of them probably forgot who I was by then. And then, so it took me the third round of applying to finally get my interview and ultimately get accepted to a school.
Right.
Wow, that was, yeah.
Inspiring. I'm really glad to hear that you kept pursuing it. And I'm curious how you found education in an American dental school, if you noticed any differences with your peers who maybe studied in Canada, and what it was like to move to DC.
Moving to DC was interesting. It was at a much tamer time in the US.
Right.
Right. I think it was the year that Obama, or the year after Obama first became in office.
Mm-hmm.
DC is a very diverse culture. Howard itself is a HBCU, a historically Black college university. So a lot of ethnic diversity there compared to the schools in Canada.
Interesting.
It took a little adjustment period, but I found I fit right in because of my cultural background. Kind of was a little natural fit for that environment.
Right. Yeah, and that's something that we find is lacking in Canadian dental schools, is that diversity factor. Sorry. So our next question, Rizbeth, you could hit the slide. We're curious why you chose to practice as a general practitioner, and if there's something in particular about general dentistry that appeals to you and ultimately guided you in that path?
Well, I like general dentistry because I like the ability to do a little bit of everything. Every day is different. You're not doing just one or two things each appointment. So it's to me, it's a little more exciting. You get to dabble a little bit in everything.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. And
For
is there
sure.
a certain procedure that is your favorite, or like you said, you like to transition through all different?
I wouldn't say favorite, but I enjoy the restorative side. Even just basic restorations. Class twos are pretty interesting to me. Endos, even extractions.
Right. That's great.
For sure,
And,
yeah.
and currently, could you speak about where you're working and what your practice is like?
So right now it's a smaller two operatory office. Me and my dad work there. My dad's still working. We have one hygienist. My mom is actually the office manager. I have an aunt that's a receptionist, and we have one hygienist.
That's so nice. It's good to
Wow.
have involved.
Yeah, my dad's been working the same building for about since the 70s.
Very interesting for sure. And I just add to the conversation, I find it really fascinating the fact that you never kept so you tried applying multiple times, and you sort of, that was a very inspiring story, because I feel like many times when people are applying for professional schools or in general for a program, when they fail, they lose their motivation. But the fact that you kept trying, it was really interesting, and it paid off definitely. So you found what was missing, and then you added the piece, and that was very interesting and inspiring.
Right, and then many people applying to professional schools and dental schools in particular, many people who want to consider it don't have the mid to high 90 GPA or the certain requirements that most recruiters look at right away. I should point out the other thing I did in the meantime was volunteer at a lot of different offices to shadow.
Mm-hmm.
So that's easily done, but maybe not these days due to COVID and limiting the number of people in the office. But yeah, but beforehand, most dentists would be happy to, if you're an aspiring student, come in for half a day or a day, even just to talk, or they can observe a couple clinical procedures. I used to do that regularly before COVID hit. We'd have aspiring dental students and dental students as well come into the office, and I'd try to pick a day where we were kind of maybe doing one or two interesting procedures for them to have a look at.
Wow,
Really
that's really interesting. That's really nice of you to welcome the students into your practice. So with that, I want to shift to our next question. So we talked about really diversity, but and I mean, your background is also you have a very diverse background. So do you have any sort of other stories of diversity, or that you find it really interesting during your journey, or any other aspects of diversity that you wanted to point out? Any other similar friends who went through similar journeys, or sort of any challenges that you came across as well as you were going through your dental school journey, or not?
In terms of challenges, I'm lucky enough to have grown up in pretty diverse area of Toronto, went to pretty diverse schools at Western and Howard. So I wouldn't really say along the way I've really had any challenges. But in some ways, it's actually been a blessing or a little helpful. For example, when we get to talking about the mission trip, it was largely because of my Jamaican background that I became involved in the mission trip to Jamaica. As well, going to the different cultural events that I was talking about earlier, is a good way to network with um, other people that share your background. And a lot of them are my patients already. A lot of them become patients because they see me at these events.
Definitely. Wow. That's a very sort of good networking opportunity as well. Because of your background, you are able to attract people as well, and people feel comfortable working with you because they might see themselves in you in terms of, yeah. So you wanted to
yeah,
add
and
something?
when they come into the office, when they come into the office, they never know who they'll run into there. Maybe somebody they see at these events sometimes all the time. Maybe long lost colleague or friend that they may not have seen since Jamaica, high school days. It's kind of like a barbershop atmosphere in the waiting room, or at least it used to be before COVID.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah. So with that,
Now, another interesting thing is that some of the older patients have been with my family since my grandfather's days. So it's funny, they'll sometimes come in and they'll point out these old amalgams or yellow gold crowns and bridges and be like, your grandfather put these in here and they're still there, and oftentimes they still hold up.
Wow, and that's very satisfying to see that you've been doing good work for people and patients in general. So you mentioned your mission trips. Is there any chance you could explain them more? Is there any way interested students can join your trips, and how are they organized, and also what impact COVID has had on those trips?
Okay, yeah, I've seen. See, you got some nice action shots of me in the clinics there, so that's pretty nice. The particular mission trip I got involved in, I mentioned I had the Jamaican connection. Obviously, we go to Jamaica every year. It's based in Jamaica. But the founder of the mission trip, which is officially titled the Jamaica Dental Mission, Dr. Dwight McLeod, he's a Jamaican dentist, periodontist. He went for his dental degree at Howard, and he's now the dean at the dental school in Missouri, A.T. Still. So he had started this trip about 20 years ago, a little over 20 years ago. Normally, he used to bring his colleagues from his school in his area in the States. When I was in my third year at Howard, going into my fourth year, I had a mutual connection with him. So I was put in touch with him. He invited me on the trip along with 3 of my classmates at the time. And I've basically been going every year since until we couldn't. In 2019 was the last year. Couldn't go last year because of COVID. Not going this year because of COVID. So I was started as a D4 student, fourth year student. Then when I graduated, I was going as attending dentist. And then the last several years, I transitioned to a team leader of one of our clinics there. And as far as the trip itself, it's probably one of the bigger organized mission trips you can find. We have 3 different clinics there that we work out of. Usually anywhere between 60 to 70 volunteers go down. A lot of students, some dentists, some pharmacists, and even some medical doctors sometimes go. A lot of different specialists, pediatric dentists, periodontists. And because the amount of people that go, the volunteers, and the number of clinics we have open, on average, in about 4 days of work down there, we can see about 1,000 patients.
Wow, that's very interesting. And what type of cases are they? Are they like root canals, mostly restorative, or extractions?
Mostly extractions, mainly because you're limited a lot by, you don't have a lab to make crowns, or we don't often have x-rays there, so you're limited in what endos you can do.
Mhm.
Mainly extractions. We do have couple cavitrons at each clinic and a couple mobile high-speed units. So we're able to do a lot of scalings, root planings, more restorations with each year that goes by. We're able to do more restorations because we'll either upgrade our equipment or bring new equipment. And one of the goals that we try to been as we go along is to end up doing less extractions but more restorations while seeing the same amount of people.
That's awesome.
In the last 2 or 3 years we've been going, we've been able to, our numbers have gone in that trend.
That's really great.
Wow.
Could you speak a bit about what kind of patients you tend to? Are they mostly children or adults, and are they from lower socioeconomic status?
Yeah, it's all ages. So kids, it could range from kids seeing the dentist for the first time, like the cute girl in blue in one of those pictures.
Yes, the top right, yeah.
To seniors that have been are not able to see the dentist normally. We stay on the main area of Montego Bay, but we travel to rural areas surrounding it. Mostly lower socioeconomic status. Honestly, most people there can't afford a lot of dental work. A lot of them, the only time they see the dentist is each year when we go. And we provide treatments, whatever we can do, whatever they need. If they need to come back 2 days for more work, they do. They'll show up early in the mornings and wait in the heat just to get their appointment. And when they finally get through, they're usually very appreciative.
For sure, definitely. And I can imagine lots of work on prevention is also going on regarding trying to improve the oral hygiene, so we can probably decrease the incidence.
Yes. So we'll do prophies. We'll do we'll get a bunch of kids together, our teams, and go over oral hygiene, how to brush, how to floss, how to do all these things. Exactly. Just because a lot of them really don't have the education.
No, that's for sure. And I feel like that's a big component. Always education can prevent further disease. So that was really informative. I really enjoyed it. So is there any way people can join as volunteers, or is there any way our audience can be involved in these mission trips? I mean, ideally when the COVID situation gets under control.
Yeah, so we're hoping next year we don't know obviously how things are going to play out, but we're hoping next year we can be back in action. The best way to get involved in our mission trip is to go to our website, jamaicadentalmission.org, and check it out. Go from there. You can contact the people in charge, and if you have any questions, and if you're serious about it, you can actually, there's information about how to apply to be on the trip.
Good.
If not our specific trip, I do encourage, especially when you're a dental student, to get involved in some sort of mission trip at least once. There's a ton of different ones out there. When I know from my experience as a student, the experience I got because of the amount of patients you'll see on the mission trip is invaluable. I think when I went to Howard, I ended up graduating, only done maybe like 8 or 10 extractions. You'll do that in maybe a couple hours on this mission trip.
Wow. And that can really good way to build up a skill and also serve a lot of people, which can go a long way.
Oh yeah, you build up your skills, the amount of practice you get, especially with I found in particular, especially giving the nerve blocks. The inferior alveolar block is where I really got a lot of practice there and honed my skills and learned a lot of techniques I still use today.
That's awesome. So that was very informative. I really enjoyed that conversation. So sort of to finish our conversation, do you have any advice for people who are going through a journey that's similar as yours, meaning that maybe they first are trying to apply to dental school and they are from diverse background, they're not sure whether they have the connections to get in, and they feel like they are not well represented in the profession. So do you have any advice for them? I feel like your story was already very informative in a sense that you kept trying and trying and it finally worked out. But any other aspects that you want to point out for our audience?
Well, number one, if it's really what you want to do, don't give up. Even if you're go out and do little things, like I said, shadow, that counts towards something you could put on your application. You can talk about in your interviews if you get one. Also, don't be afraid to look at different areas. I know if I was dead set on going to school in Canada, I never would have gotten into dental school. So sometimes you got to broaden your horizons. Maybe different schools will consider different things, have a little different requirements.
For sure. Yeah.
There's also schools, even if you're not able to, for whatever reason, get in to the States or Canada. For example, there's schools in Jamaica now. There's two schools there, which go by, they're accredited by the US standards. So you go to school in Jamaica, but then you end up taking the US board exams and are able to work in the States, for example. Or you could take the Canadian exams and come up here.
Yes.
So if you do a little research, you'll be able to, and you stick to it, you should be able to find something that guides you in the right path.
Awesome. Wow, that was very interesting. I feel like, so just to summarize, the main ideas were first keep trying and trying to improve each cycle. And the other one was trying to find as many as the schools and as many as opportunities as possible, so that hopefully different schools consider different criteria and eventually people can find out the spot that suits them the best. Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Link, for giving us your time. And I'm really confident that our audience really enjoyed this conversation. And I was really inspired by your story in a sense that I also had difficulties in getting into professional school. And I really resonated when you pointed out you kept trying and trying and it worked out. So your story is a story of hope, being that even after 2 or 3 tries, it will definitely work. So thank you so much for sharing it with us.
Thank you, Dr. Lin.
Okay, great. Thank you for having me.
All right.